Good day guys, Jesre Earl Dales of BSEE3C here to show you my output Intel Core i5-10210U versus AMD Ryzen 5 Pro 2400G. Now, these are the logos, the brand, Intel Core i5-10210U and AMD Ryzen Pro 5 2400G. Now, for Intel Core i5-10210U, Intel started Intel Core i5-10210U sales in 21 August 2019. This is Comet Lake architecture notebook processor, primarily aimed at office systems. It has 4 cores and 8 threads, and is based on 14nm manufacturing technology with a maximum frequency of 4200 MHz and a locked multiplier. Compatibility-wise, this is a FCBGA 1528 processor with a TDP of 15 watt and a maximum temperature of 100 degrees Celsius. It supports DDR4 memory, and it provides a power benchmark at 5.92%. And for AMD Ryzen 5 Pro 2400G, AMD started AMD Ryzen 5 Pro 2400G sales 10 May 2018 at a recommended price of $169. This is Raven Ridge architecture desktop processor primarily aimed at office systems. It has 4 cores and 8 threads, and is based on a 14nm technology with a maximum frequency of 3600 MHz to 3900 MHz per core, and a locked multiplier. Compatibility-wise, this is AMD's socket AM4 processor with a TDP of 65 watts. It supports DDR4 dual-channel memory, and it provides a power benchmark at 7.63%. Now, here is the graph of value and sentiment, market share from January 2020 to March 2022. And it's nice to have. Now, for the general specs, Intel Core i5-10210U has 4 to 8 cores to threads. It has a 14nm semiconductor size. It has integrated graphics, 15 watt TDP, 100 degrees Celsius CPU temperature. PCIe version has 3, 12 DirectX versions, OpenGL version of 4.5, 1100 MHz GPU turbo, and supports a 64-bit. Now, for AMD Ryzen 5 Pro 2400G, also has the same cores and threads, 4 cores and 8 threads, same size of semiconductor, 14nm. Also had integrated graphics, but it has 65 watt TDP. It has a lesser CPU temperature of 95 degrees Celsius, same PCIe version, also same DirectX version, that is 12, and OpenGL version 4.6, has a 1250 MHz GPU turbo, and also supports 64-bit. And now, for its performance, Intel Core i5-10210U has 4 by 1.6 GHz CPU speed, 8 CPU threads, 4.2 GHz turbo clock speed, no unlocked multiplier, an L1 cache of 256 KB, L2 cache of 1 MB, L3 cache of 6 MB, L2 core at 0.25 MB per core, and L3 core that has 1.5 MB per core. And for the AMD Ryzen 5 Pro 2400G, It has 4 by 3.6 GHz CPU speed, 8 CPU threads, 3.9 GHz turbo clock speed, no unlock multiplier, an L1 cache of 384 kilobytes, L2 cache of 2 MB, L3 cache of 4 megabytes, L2 core at 0.5 megabytes per core, and L3 core at 1 megabyte per core. And for their memories, Intel Core has 2666 MHz RAM speed, 41.66 GB per second max memory bandwidth, 2 memory channels, 64 GB maximum memory amount, and DDR memory version that is 4, and does not support ECC memory. Now for AMD Ryzen, it has 2933 MHz RAM speed, 43.71 GB per second max memory bandwidth. It has also 2 memory channels, also 64 GB maximum memory amount, also same memory version of DDR that is 4, but it supports ECC memory. Now, for its features, Intel Core i5 is using multi-threading. It has AES, also has AVX, SSE version of 4.2, it has F16C, also has MMX, no trust zone, but has an X bit. Now for the AMD Ryzen 5 Pro, it is also using multi-threading, also has AAX, AVX, same SSE version of 4.2, also has F16C and MMX, also no trust zone, and also has an X bit. Now, for the application test, for the Intel Core i5, Cinebench R20 CPU-based encoding, it has 426 single and 1134 full multi-scores. Cinebench R15, it has 681 for multi-score and 164 in single score. In the handbrake FPS, it has 11.10 FPS. Adobe Photoshop time has 37.7 seconds. And for the 7-zip, it has the compression of 19.9 megabytes per second and the compression of 235.5 megabytes per second. For the AMD 5 Pro, Cinebench R20 391 for single and 1922 for multi-scores. Cinebench R15, it has 820 in multi-score and 154 in single scores. In handbrake FPS, it has 22.67 FPS. In Adobe Photoshop, 38.3 seconds time. In 7-zip that has compression of 18 Mbps and the compression of 268 Mbps. And now, for its gaming test, Intel Core i5 for Grand Theft Auto 5 or GTA 5, it has an average FPS of 25 FPS. For Counter-Strike Global Offensive or CSGO, it has 45 FPS average. For Players Unknown Battlegrounds or PUBG, its average FPS is 37 FPS. For the Ryzen Pro 5, Grand Theft Auto has 101 FPS average. For CSGO, it has 402 FPS average. And for Players Unknown Battlegrounds, it has 98 FPS average. Now, frame per second, The more frames per second, the higher is better. And higher FPS is better gaming results. Now, cost to performance analysis. For Intel Core i5, it costs $226 in the latest. It has 0.3 GHz higher turbo clock speed, 50 watts lower TDP, 2 MB bigger L3 cache, 5 degrees Celsius higher maximum operating temperature, 7.29% higher pass mark result in single thread, 8.95 higher Cinebench R20 single results, and 0.5 MB per core more L3 cache per core. Now, for the cost to performance analysis for AMD Ryzen 5 Pro, it costs $210 in the latest. Better gaming experience, more suitable for playing high performance, high end, and high FPS setting games. Now for the data overclock score. Memory, 1 core, 2 core, 4 cores, and 8 cores. And its average score. Now going back. Intel Core i5 has low OC memory latency, slightly faster OC single core speed, and slightly faster OC dual core speed. But AMD Ryzen Pro 5 has faster OC octa-core speed. And also AMD Ryzen has slightly faster quad-core speed and much faster octa-core speed in its average score. And for my summary, as I had been researched in many various sites in Google and YouTube, mostly in versus.com, the processor that is more powerful in terms of raw computational capability in various activity will be Intel Core i5-10210U. As shown in the data above, it has even a little bit more than its opponent in terms of turbo clock speed, L3 cache size, lower TDP, and more. And it is more recommended in productivity applications due to a little bit more advanced specs than its opponent. And as in terms of overall gaming performance, AMD Ryzen Pro 2400G is the better one as shown in the previous data, leaving behind its opponent with a much more higher FPS average, which will give a much more lovely gaming experience. But as for me, the more cost-effective would be Intel Core i5-10210U, for it has much more higher specs than its counterpart, and it gives more raw power computational capability, and its only downfall was its counterpart was much more suitable in gaming and gives much better gaming performance. Thanks for watching. Redates to Google and YouTube at https versus.com.